Alrighty, welcome to this video. Thank you for taking your time out to look at this. It's my first video, so we'll see how it goes. But I wanted to talk about something that I believe is lacking in today's society. As millennials in 2022, I feel that we all we've entered the world in quite a hedonistic, reactive, and somewhat unconscious time of existence, of human existence. And we've come to a point where, I guess, spirituality, or wisdom at least, has sort of taken a back seat here in the West, I guess, through other means of worship, whether that be consumerism or capitalism, or that's a system. But yeah, our values have shifted dramatically in the past half century. But without further ado, I'm going to start the video. So the topic of today's video is called non-attachment, the spiritual law of non-attachment. So in various, spiritual and somewhat religious texts, we do hear this ethos of non-attachment, whether it's Christ saying, be in the world, but not of the world. So don't let the world live in you. But first of all, let's cut it right back. Before we talk about anything philosophical or spiritual, whatever. First of all, let's figure out what attachment is at its core. So, attachment. Another word for attachment is craving, is addiction, or bondage. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about attachment. And what's spirituality? I'm talking mostly today about Eastern spirituality, that being Hinduism and Buddhism, as they are the ones that really have this idea of non-attachment baked into their texts. Like an example of someone who's very attached could be, we commonly see that in, say, relationships, like romantic relationships. You might be seeing a friend who's just been broken up with, guy or girl, and he or she is crying or mourning and saying, how will I ever get over this person? How will I ever make it through? And I think everyone's seen that before or has been there personally. And that's a prime example of someone who's very attached. And I feel like in today's society, we could really benefit from this spiritual understanding that would alleviate some of that, I guess, how much it consumes us. So let's just sort of talk about what one can be attached to. So one can be attached to ideas, to people, to concepts, to things, like material things. People are quite attached to their houses and their cars. And I don't blame them for, spending half your years trying to save up for a house or a car, and it gets scratched. You're gonna go insane. And then I guess also we're quite attached to pleasure as a society. We're quite attached to the mind, and we're also quite attached to this body. Everyone's concerned about, with Instagram and social media, we're very concerned about how we look and how we come across, and do we have nice skin, and do we have nice muscles? And this is including me, by the way. I'm not excused by this. I do live in this world. It's part of the human, I guess, nature to be accepted. But anyways, I'm going to bring this back to the Buddha. Now, the Buddha lived about 500 BC, I'm quite sure, and he studied suffering. He dedicated his whole life to studying suffering. He was more of a psychologist, really. He really studied the mind to the depths of it, even to the point where, to this day, we're still trying to catch up to his teachings. So the Buddha came to the conclusion that attachment is the root cause of all suffering. Now think about that for a minute. Attachment is the root cause of all suffering. Now, like, once we delve into that topic and understand what he's talking about, we can start living a more harmonious and joyous existence. Now, let's think about, so craving and attachment is the root cause of all suffering. That's what the Buddha said. And what he means by that is that he means that attachment to the point where when it is time to release that thing or person or place or concept, one cannot let go. That's what he means by non-attachment. When it is time to say goodbye to your loved one, or say goodbye to a country, or say goodbye to this body when we pass away, one cannot let go. That would be someone who's attached. And being non-attached would be would be understanding the impermanence of life, and understanding that we're making our lives harder by becoming attached to these things, whether it be people, place, person, thing, idea, concepts. And people are very attached to their concepts, political views, their ideas. They can't budge on it almost, And so why I'm bringing this up is because the spiritual understanding is that attachment is the biggest impediment to enlightenment. And all enlightenment is, in short, is just transcending the animalistic side of the human, which we all have. Greed, lust, envy, hatred. That's our animalistic side. And enlightenment is becoming free from those shackles that our base level primal urges have over us, right? To rise above that. That's what enlightenment is. And I feel like we're really missing that in today's day and age. Like, we don't have that wisdom instilled into our education system. And I guess I've been on a rampage for the past year or so trying to figure this out, because I've just gained so much value from it. But basically, attachment ultimately leads to a struggle for existence. It's a harder life to be attached to things. When it is time to leave a country, hey, I'm leaving it, whatever. Don't cling to something. One mustn't cling, and in relationships, you mustn't cling to that person. Love doesn't work on clinging and be so attached. Truth be told, if you really had love for that person, you would give them that space they needed. And attachment and love are very different things, but they often get, mixed. And I'm certainly number one culprit of being a culprit of that. But moving on, so I've talked about Buddhism, I've talked about how it can help out, but I want to bring you to this book, the Bhagavad Gita. And that is a Hindu book in the Vedic tradition, and it's packed with such wise philosophy. I can't explain. This is the first book I read when I really got into spirituality. And I was so drawn to it because this is something so different from my culture, being raised as a Catholic, and not really practicing it, just sort of out of culture. And there's nothing wrong with Catholicism, but this stuff is it's just a different perspective. And I'll explain what I mean by that and how it relates to attachment. So one of the verses in this book, verse 2, I'm pretty sure, it says, perform your duty equipoised. That means balanced. O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. Whoa, that is such a bar. That when I read that just blew my mind. And I'm gonna explain what it means. So, perform your duty equipoise, balance. So that could be at work, that could you be a father, that could be you being in charge of a soccer team, that could be you playing in a band, or that could be you even going to the gym and working out. So that's your duty. You perform that duty in a balanced manner, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So that's just saying, perform your duty in a balanced state of mind and being unattached and even unaware of the outcome. We live in such a day and age where we're so outcome focused. You know, why wouldn't I do anything unless there's an outcome? And what these rishis, these sages, these yogis, these gurus are saying is that fall in love with the process. Don't fall in love with the outcome of it, because you can't always control the outcome, but what you can control is the quality of the process. You know, you'll see a lot of, there's like an analogy of like walking a tightrope, and you're walking the tightrope, and if you have one eye on your feet and one eye on the finishing line of the tightrope, it's inefficient. And this is exactly what Krishna in this book, the Bhagavad Gita, is saying. Don't be so attached to the outcome. Just fall in love with the process, and if you make that process joyous and harmonious, well, then you've done the best you can do. You can't, like, there's no point putting extra pressure on yourself. You know, like, I'll relate this to the gym. I'm a big avid gym goer. I love the gym. It gives me endorphins. But being attached to the outcome would be going to the gym because I want to get a nice body, to impress ladies, to get the status, to get guys to respect me. That would be a very attached motivation. Whereas if I fall in love with the process of working out and feeling each muscle fiber tearing through each rep, that would be a much more sustainable and healthy way to look at it. So, and I'm not saying you can't perform, like, have goals. Of course you have goals, still endeavor, but you're unattached to the outcome, meaning that your well-being and your happiness isn't dependent on which way it goes, because you did your best and you performed to the best of your ability. And this is such wise advice that we can really take from this. And I just really want to share it, basically. As you can tell, I'm really excited about that. But all things considered, I'm going to finish with this quote by a man named Sadhguru. If you haven't checked out Sadhguru, he's one of the best spiritual teachers of our generation. And what's so good about him is that he links that spiritual world with the layman, someone who's unaware of spirituality or wisdom so well. And he's not religious as well. So that's why Westerners love him. And I love him for that reason. He doesn't belong to a certain religious school or dogma or doctrine. But what he says is this: because you could not find joy, you settled for pleasure. Pleasure is beautiful, but it is just a shadow of joy. When one becomes a pleasure seeker, one must always have someone or something to attain this pleasure. This activity causes huge bondage, aka attachment. When one is free from all bondage, that is real freedom, and then joy comes. So he's basically saying the most joyful you can be is being unattached, you know? And that's such a peaceful place to be, you know? He's saying pleasure. It always requires someone or something. Think about that. How you're in a vulnerable position when you chase pleasure all the time, because you either need that substance, or you need that sexual release from that person, or you need that food which gives you pleasure. You're in a vulnerable position now, because now your well-being is dependent on that external source. So when you become free from the shackles of attachment and you can break free and become unattached, then you're in a position of power. Come on, let's go. Anyways, that's the video. That's 14 minutes. I want to cut it there. If you have any other ideas, you want to hear about any other spiritual topics or philosophical topics or ancient wisdom, please let me know. And I'd love to talk to you about it. I love this stuff. Please let me know. Thank you for watching. See you later.